He was surrounded by servants, gold, and absolute authority, yet he could not move. Sitting was required, standing was discouraged, rest was seen as weakness. His body resisted, but the role did not, and no one intervened because this was how power functioned. In royal courts, posture was not a matter of comfort, it was a statement of authority. A king was expected to sit upright for long stretches of time during councils, ceremonies, meals, and audiences. Stillness signaled control. Movement suggested uncertainty. Leaning, reclining, or shifting position too often was noticed. It was interpreted not as discomfort, but as weakness. As the body tired, the posture did not change. Pain was endured rather than adjusted for. The chair became a place of obligation, not rest. What might have corrected itself elsewhere was held in place here. Muscles stiffened, circulation slowed, discomfort deepened into something persistent. The body began to fail quietly, not because it was incapable, but because the role demanded stillness long after stillness had become harmful. And this was only the beginning. Rest was not forbidden by law, but it was restricted by expectation. A king who reclined too often invited observation. A king who withdrew from view raised concern. Privacy itself became suspect. Lying down outside prescribed hours suggested decline. Remaining seated even in discomfort preserved the appearance of control. Rooms were arranged for visibility, not recovery. Schedules favored presence over relief. The body was expected to endure until ritual allowed release. What should have been temporary fatigue became sustained strain. Opportunities for recovery were postponed, then forgotten. The system did not ask whether rest was needed. It asked only whether authority was being maintained. And in that calculation, the body always came second. Royal life removed the need for effort. Servants lifted what the king did not. They walked where he did not. They adjusted clothing, brought chairs, and anticipated every movement before it was required. What began as convenience became substitution. The body no longer needed to adapt, because adaptation was no longer demanded. Steps were reduced. Posture became fixed. Muscles that once adjusted naturally were held in place for hours at a time. In ordinary life, discomfort forces movement. At court, discomfort was accommodated instead. Chairs were brought closer. Cushions were added. Time was extended. The body received relief without correction. And so the condition remained, not challenged, not interrupted, quietly preserved by the very comfort designed to protect it. Pain was not ignored. It was managed. At court, discomfort was something to be contained, not discussed. To acknowledge it openly risked more than sympathy, it invited judgment. A king who spoke of pain appeared uncertain. A king who adjusted his behavior around it appeared weakened. Endurance, by contrast, was admired. Silence became proof of strength. So pain was absorbed quietly. It was endured through long audiences and public rituals. It was carried without comment, even as it deepened. What could have been addressed early was left unspoken. The body signaled distress, but the role demanded composure, and in choosing silence over adjustment, the condition was allowed to. Public visibility was not optional. It was proof that authority still held. A king was expected to be seen seated at councils, present at ceremonies, visible at meals and audiences regardless of physical condition. Absence raised questions. Stillness reassured. Any opportunity for rest had to be negotiated around appearances. Recovery was postponed for schedules. Discomfort was carried into public view. The body was given no uninterrupted time to correct itself. Moments that might have allowed relief were broken repeatedly by obligation. Even when illness was acknowledged, performance continued. The role required presence, not wellness, and so recovery was fragmented, delayed, and weakened, not by negligence but by the constant demand to be seen. This pattern appeared repeatedly across European courts, shaping the daily lives of multiple kings rather than a single reign. Royal physicians did not work in isolation. They worked under observation. Treatment followed doctrine, not experimentation. Deviation carried risk, not only to the patient but to the physician's position. Allowing a king to rest without intervention appeared passive. Changing routine suggested uncertainty. consistency was safer than adaptation, so care became procedural. Visits were frequent, treatments continued, adjustments were minimal. The body was observed closely, yet rarely given space to respond on its own. Natural recovery required time, privacy, and movement, all of which conflicted with protocol. Medicine served authority first, relief came second, and in maintaining order, the opportunity for true healing quietly slipped away. For kings such as Henry VIII, Louis XIV, and others like them, medical care followed court expectation more closely than bodily. The early signs were not dramatic: stiffness, fatigue, moments of discomfort that passed when sitting still. Under different conditions, these would have faded. Movement would have returned circulation. Rest would have corrected strain. At court, nothing interrupted the pattern. Small adjustments were postponed. Temporary pain was treated as manageable. The body was expected to endure rather than recover. Over time, what had been occasional became constant. Discomfort hardened into limitation. Flexibility narrowed. The body adapted to stillness, not health. By the time change became necessary, it was no longer possible. What could have been corrected quietly had become fixed, preserved by years of enforced routine. Strength was no longer something felt. It was something displayed. Posture became performance. Endurance became evidence. The absence of complaint was taken as proof of stability. Even as the body resisted, the image remained fixed. A king was expected to appear unchanged, seated, composed, present, regardless of internal strain. Adjustment was avoided because it would be noticed. Rest was delayed because it would be interpreted. Pain was carried quietly to preserve the appearance of control. The role demanded consistency, not honesty, and so strength survived as an outward act, while the body beneath it continued to narrow its limits, unseen, unacknowledged, and increasingly unable to. The problem was not unnoticed. It was recognized, and then left intact. Courtiers saw the strain, physicians recorded decline, servants adjusted routines to compensate, but altering the structure carried risk. Changing posture, schedule, or protocol implied that what had come before was flawed. And power does not easily admit error. Tradition protected itself by continuing. What had always been done was repeated, even when its cost was visible. Individual concern was absorbed by institutional habit. Awareness existed, but authority did not follow it. The system did not fail because no one understood the damage. It endured because understanding alone was never enough to permit change. Eventually, the body ceased to keep pace with the role. The decline was not marked by announcement or spectacle. Records grew shorter. Observations replaced descriptions. Strength was noted as reduced, then no longer mentioned at all. The position continued even as the body receded from it. Duties were adjusted, appearances were abbreviated. The crown remained, though the body beneath it did not recover. What endured was not the individual, but the structure that had shaped him. The routines persisted. The expectations remained unchanged. There was no correction written into the system, only continuation. And so the role survived its bearer, not because the damage had been resolved, but because power had